And turn up your interweb. Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. It's Dudes and Beer.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to episode 324 of the Dudes and Beer podcast. Chris Jordan, your host here, coming to you from the fabulous Austin, Texas. Still here, just got off a road gig, actually. It was pretty fun. Big shout outs to our good friend out there in Escondido with K-Spaz Radio, Richard Spazoff. Congratulations on the new studio space, my friend. It is a great spot, and we are looking for many great things from you out there. While you're online checking out everything from K-Spaz, please do make sure to stop on by and check out the Dudes and Beer Facebook group. That is where you can find all of the news that is out there, all the wild stuff that we post from various news organizations. Out of the New York Post, surveillance video shows gunmen approaching the Florida concert venue before the mass shooting that just happened. Another one out of Washington Post, Democrats and Republicans unified in taking UFOs seriously. That is, of course, part of our topic this evening with our returning guest, Jared Murphy, is the topic of disclosure. We'll also be having that topic again next week with our great and good guest, Mike Turber of 5x5 News. DailyMail.uk is talking about Trump is telling people he will be reinstated as president by August. That, of course, coming on the heels of people saying that a Myanmar-type coup is necessary with Biden. NASA.gov has released some beautiful photos of the Curiosity rover and the shimmering clouds that were taken on shimmering cloud pictures that were taken on Mars. Our recent guest, David Brody, has just released a new book, The Templars of Enoch, Templars and the Molungian Legacy. And I'm here to tell you, folks, I was actually privy to a pre-release copy of that. I was part of the beta reading, and man, that is an enjoyable read. The work of David Brody is awesome. It actually takes real Templar research that has gone on here in America, artifacts, images, all kinds of things, and weaves them into Dan Brown-esque stories. Really fantastic stuff. All of that is there, of course, on our Dudes and Beer Facebook group. Stop on by, and you too can keep track of all the titles and headlines that we cover here in the News of the Week section. Our guest this evening, Jared Murphy, he is the author of It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. We had him on a few weeks ago. We'll be talking with him tonight about the upcoming disclosure. This is for those of you who aren't watching the Facebook live streams and stuff like that. I've got the air quotes up, quote, disclosure going on with our federal government. We'll be getting into that. We'll be, of course, unpacking a lot of that next week. But I figured with all of this happening, Jared, we had already scheduled him whenever we canceled the show last time. It was like, hey, get me on the books. I'd love to be back on. And we did. And then all this started happening. And it's like, man, what a perfect conversation to have right now. The idea that even the lost technologies of humanity do not necessarily have to be alien in origin, much less the technologies that we are seeing on these videos. Do they have to be alien in origin? Not that that doesn't exist, not that that's not there, not that there aren't programs that have recovered wreckage, all kinds of stuff. But is what we are seeing straight up alien? We'll talk about that tonight. And before we get into our guest this evening, I'd like to give a big shout out to our good friends over at True Hemp Science. We had Chris on last week. We had a great conversation. Thank you, all of you that have gone over there to the website and started purchasing from True Hemp Science. They are my favorite producer of CBD out there. Stop on by. TrueHempScience.com is the website. Dudes7 is the code that you want to use to not only save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more on their amazing CBD products, edibles. There's spagyrics, which got into last week, the concept of the spagyric in alchemy and stuff like that. The idea of using not only the whole plant in a reduction, but using the refuse of that reduction in a following reduction and a following reduction, and wash, rinse, repeating that process. And really wild stuff. So amazing technology being used, amazing product over at truehempscience.com. Use code DUDE7 to save 7% off your entire cart of $50 or more. And you will also get 2 edibles. Count them, 2 edibles, folks. And just so you know, you're like, whatever. This is the size of one of the cookies. Like, look at my hand. Like, that's a big cookie. There's 2 cookies in there. So you get one of these or one of their brownie edibles for free with your code DUDE7 over at True Hemp Science. Great stuff, fantastic stuff. I have tried things from dispensaries all over the country. Anytime I came home, Chris was one of my first visits. So stop on by, check them out there. And, of course, while you are online checking all of that out, make sure to stop on by Podcast Cadet. Here is a message from them before we welcome our guest, Jared Murphy. Have you considered starting a podcast? Looking for a way to make your business a voice of authority in an industry? Then Podcast Cadet is the solution for you. Whether starting a podcast for yourself, your brand, business, school, church, or just plain fun, Podcast Cadet is here to help you navigate the waters of the podcast industry. Specializing in one-on-one consultation and training with industry professionals in fields ranging from podcast technology and editing to distribution, monetization, and even social media strategies, Podcast Cadet tailors their services to the specific needs of you and your podcast. Do you already have a podcast and trying to find ways to engage and grow your audience? Sign up for your Podcast Cadet audit today and let us help you explore new and exciting ways to leverage your content and elevate your podcast brand to whole new levels. From consultational workshops to affordable podcast production and maintenance packages, Podcast Cadet is your one-stop shop for everything podcast related on the internet. Visit podcastcadet.com today to sign up for your consultation or training and use code DUDES20 to save 20% off your entire purchase. That website again is podcastcadet.com. That's right, folks. Make sure to stop on by. Podcast Cadet is the website. DUDES20 is the code that you want to use to save 20% off your whole cart there. Full disclosure, I am one of the founders of Podcast Cadet. The whole reason I started it was because I saw people getting bad advice when it came time to starting a show, branding a show, things like that. So for me, having come from the realm of broadcast, corporate work, things like that, it was something that was just kind of drilled into me to maintain as a producer. So I teamed up with people that were social media folks, branding folks, stuff like that, to help create this system to be able to help folks out. So stop on by, check it out. Our guest this evening, Jared Murphy, is the author of the amazing book, It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering Our Lost History. It is available on Amazon Prime. It is also available on the Dudes and Beer website, dudesandbeer.com/store. Jared, how are you doing this evening, my friend?
I am doing so well, and since we've talked, the book is no longer available on Amazon. I should have said that.
Oh, wow. I'm wondering, I guess maybe the link that I opened is an older link.
Well, yeah, you need to go ahead and eliminate that. And right now, I have an all-inclusive audio book for the visually impaired and for other people who are, of course, just doing audiobooks on the road.
Okay.
I inclusively read the captions and describe the photographs within my book. And that audiobook is available as part of a notaliens.com membership area, and along with all my other exclusive interviews on notaliens.com. But until my new agent gets right now, my book will be being re-released, and it's in the process of re-editing for a new edition. And it's it's partially because of that disclosure we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, and there we just saw the subscribe email pop up on your website. I love it. Whenever websites have that incorporated, it is absolutely essential, that call to action and really getting people involved with that. So let's talk a little bit real quick, because like you said, the whole reason for the redo of the book is the modern topic of disclosure and the things that are coming out as we speak right now, getting ready to be brought out to Congress and rolled out to the world anyway, here in the next week or so.
Yeah, it's so hard I knew that my topic to begin with was going to be, it's not like I'm the only one who's speaking about it. Yeah. Well, limitedly it's so much easier for people to get their heads around the idea that aliens came and helped us at some point. It's hard enough for us to figure out what's our history to the Younger Dryas, where we're all accepting now that the biblical flood, that or what's described in quotes for us Westerners as the biblical flood, that something between 11 and 13,000 years ago, probably 11,600 years ago, that there was the Younger Dryas happened and this massive cataclysm. And we're just trying to go, okay, well, it looks like all these ruins are from before that. So then we think, okay, so before the Younger Dryas, there was a society. To make this even more migraine inducing for everyone listening, I'm thinking that there was a supervolcano that went off, Toby, in there's basically a time period between 11 and 13,000 years ago, and you have a period of digression that's still in the process that we don't know how to date stone. So basically, so we have supervolcanoes all over the earth, and what makes it even worse is I think that these not aliens were part of a global society that was actually pre-Toba, and Toba was a catastrophe that, again, this is Indonesia, but this was a volcanic eruption that just really wiped out the earth around 75,000 years ago. And I think we have indicators in our genomes from Neanderthal, Denisovan, in quotes, mystery 14% human race mixed together just between the 50 and 60,000 year mark. But that's just what we're telling ourselves. I think what happened is global society hits the fan with this Toba and the likely maybe some weaponized and some disagreements, whatever. But at the end of it, whoever didn't make it into the rock cut, the massive, extensive, around the world rock cut underground bunkers, ruins of bunkers, of tunnels that are very precision cut. Whoever didn't make it into those systems, and I don't think they were prepared for this. I don't think it was planned. I think a very fractional amount of the advanced humans survived, and then between the post-apocalyptic event of Toba going off and the Younger Dryas, you have this period of just Denisovan, Neanderthal, which genetically we know is true, mixing with a, in quotes, mystery 14% human race we don't have a record of, a human race. And that yet we have these, that's a hint to the elongated skulled people that standard academia won't test, even though there's a whole bunch of biologists, and there are a bunch of just to be fair, there are a number of academics that want to test the elongated skulls of Paracas of Peru that are found in Bolivia. They're found all over the world, but they haven't been tested because, well, they destroy the narrative for the timelines of human history.
Oh, they obliterate. They obliterate the timeline.
Yeah. It's like an elephant in the room with wings, and it's pink with dinosaur fins. Yeah. It's just, you are really ignoring it's ridiculous how you ignore this. And on top of it, you look at the skulls and they're red-headed. It's like, and they're not genetically built the same as us. They don't have the same suture lines in the skull. Their spinal column doesn't enter in the same location. These are very different human beings, but they're human, and they're part of our history. And then we have the Younger Dryas. So here we have this period of destruction, which is barely on people's radar, 75,000 plus or minus 900, 1,000 years.
Yeah.
And then we have this, everyone who survived, they start blending and mixing together. And then, Denisovan, Neanderthal, just regular humans, mystery humans, and they all like make do. And then they're, and they think, and because of Toba, we think that the human population was at one of its lowest in known history. The theory goes that the topography of the human population was maybe into the hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, that it really was that few. And so as they repopulate, they're coming across what we are going to come to know as dynastic Olmecs, Toltecs, Mayans, Aztecs, Egyptians, Harappan in India, various post-megalithic cultures in Japan, China. And because we have megalithic size ruins all over the earth, we have megalithic constructions, including pyramids, polygonal walls. That's all that's left of these giant constructions. We obsess over the construction methods, but of like, how do they cut a giant rock that's 1,000 tons or 3,000 tons in Siberia, and how do they stack them? And then, so they knew how to laser cut rocks, but then when it came to tree cutting, they just threw thatched roofs on top of stuff, like Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, exactly. They just went and mounded on top of it. And even whenever you go through, and start looking at places like Dirinkuyu, stuff like that, there are massive complexes that have been tunneled throughout the world.
Absolutely.
In Europe, even here in America. And quite a few of the native people, even the Navajos, stuff like that, talk about the fact that they came out of the ground.
Yeah, you have the ant people helping them during a giant disaster, and it's really hard to manipulate a living story, and that's one of the great arguments that I love about having an oral tradition. They're like, well, if you don't write it down, you don't know it. Well, if you don't write it down, you don't know what's written down. And how many Gregorian monks do we have to look at in their side notes and documents that say, this is how this really went. So I, Gregorian monk, on this date changed this point of history in the book because this is what the Bible should have said. This is what this history about Plato should have said.
Sure.
And before you know it, I don't think it's around. I was naive. I thought that everyone loved history and that, of course, all of Plato's original works, whatever they found, these are original. It was shocking to me, kind of like even the theory that we didn't go to the moon, just the idea that, wait, you mean all of Plato's writings and everything that we quote are actually copies of Gregorian monks saying this is what was written down? And it's like, oh, that's depressing. It hurt me.
Yeah. And
it did.
I make the point all the time. One of my favorite poems is Beowulf. I love Beowulf. It's awesome. But the fact is, the text that we have is more than likely nowhere near the story that was actively told, because it was translated by monks into the language that we have. So yeah, it was absolutely altered to fit that hero journey.
Which is fine on one level, but when we're stuck with an instinct, and I like to talk a lot about, I know we touched on a little bit last time, but genetic memory. And some people think of genetic memory as in they remember a past life, or they think it's a past life they've lived, or they tap into collective human consciousness, or they think of a paranormal or a spiritual experience, which it's not that there's not a spiritual world, it's just that people have a family of origin story, and they describe what I called banging on the blinky board, that at one point when we were a global frequency energy based society that was creating buildings that not only withstood earthquakes, but we were engineering the soil, terraforming the planet. We had a very interconnected world that was not 10 to 15% conscious, but 100% or 90% conscious. And we have abilities that are left, including tapping into these collective consciousness or these genetic memories. And the stories that we're told now, they don't, like, there's a feeling in you that goes, that just doesn't quite, like, some of it sounds right, but some of it sounds like everyone has a gut instinct for it, don't you think?
Yeah. There's for me, it's the fact that it kind of permeates me, and when something is off, that resonates more than the rest of it.
Right? It's like, it's wrong, you just don't know why, but
Yeah.
you know it. You know it.
Yeah.
And that's what's even more, and there's not even a frustration. It's just like, that's not right. And it's not because you're a know-it-all. It's not because you think there's a better answer, but you know that there is a fundamental fact completely void in that point. And I feel that's because part of it is because we do have an embedded memory, not only of what's happened to us, but we've proven, not beyond theoretical, we've actually proven in science, which I did write about, and that's part of the book. It's hard to explain to people that when I wrote, it took almost 4 years to put that book together, along with the editing that I did with my original publisher. And part of it was content, and it includes genetic research. And part of that genetic research was already we've already been aware for 15 years that you can pass actual memories through the mom. I mean, you can actually, that's the only part that they had figured out yet, and they were using worms, but they could figure out that you could actually pass an actual memory to the baby. And that's just in our modern science. Yet in esoteric, whether it's in scientific, what we would think of as an example, Eastern medicines, but in philosophical or spiritual realms, we know they exist, but proving out scientifically that you can pass on memory, that in the paranormal world, or you have these examples of young children, you have the example of that young kid recounting everything you could want to know about being a fighter pilot in World War II, and there's like no way the kid was pre-programmed, he just knew it. It's like, how did he tap into that? How did they know that? And either we're part of a collective human consciousness and can back each other's genetic memories up, and maybe that entire system on a global scale once functioned globally. And maybe that's one of the great losses we've experienced, is that we have irretrievable genetic memory of a total population that will never be able to retrieve itself.
Wow. And that's now granted, we are 20 minutes in, and that's a lot to digest.
I'm so sorry.
No, I love it though, because it's absolutely true. And if you don't, the whole reason why I wanted to have this conversation with you tonight, Jared, was because of our conversation that we had last time, where we left that off, and the fact that, yeah, we are literally facing this as a people right now, as a humanity, not even as a country, but as a humanity, and we really do have to call and recall those memories of the past, those memories where times changed for humanity, period.
Yes, that's so true.
And some of those are, I mean, I'm 45, going to be 46 in August. Some of those have happened just within my lifetime. Those rings of the bell that were so resonant that they've changed everything.
You went pre-Atari to Android phones.
Yeah, like straight up. I mean, I remember having Pong and stuff like that. I still have it. Like, I still have it. It's out in my garage.
Yeah. I have a Macintosh. I have a Macintosh laptop in a box somewhere in my mom's basement.
And to see the fact that my watch that I wear has more data gathering capability than the astronauts that went to NASA.
Yeah.
You know,
And it is we're watching this change exponentially.
yeah. And I think that we are really up against exactly what the Mayans prophesied, what the real prophecy was for 2012, which was that change would be happening. We were coming to the nighttime of a saga and a cycle in the Mayan calendar, which the nighttime just means the application of a technology. Like, okay, now you know something. What are you going to do with it? You could either go Dr. Evil or, you know, you could go world saving with the same technology. It's really up to you, you know.
Yeah.
You could go out and you could go out and find dinner with your rifle, or you could go out and start roaming the streets. You know, it's really free will that makes that decision.
Yeah, and this is the problem is that here we are. I was someone who grew up with Leonard Nimoy's In Search Of, and the idea that aliens are here and that it's easy to say that when you look at technology in the ground that you don't expect to see there. Well, one, I grew up Irish Catholic, and so, you know, when you experience something, it could be a miracle, and there's a spirituality, and it could be, you know, clearly there's a spiritual thing, and it has to do with Western belief in Christianity. Well, for me, that's my family of origin.
Sure, that's the root.
Right. And then you have this idea of, okay, well, there's In Search Of and Nova and Carl, what am I thinking of? Not Nova, but what's the other one? I can't believe I'm blanking on the show right now. I will think of it as Carl Sagan's, right. What was the other one Carl Sagan did?
Cosmos?
Yes, did I say? I don't. Anyway, the point is, it's easy. What we do is we get in our head and we go, okay, well, you know, we know the short story for me is I read Natural History Museum, and well, for me, the local museum, and my dad got National Geographic, and you know, we watched all those shows, and clearly everyone was in a loincloth and banging rocks and building fires and stabbing, you know, always stabbing a saber-toothed tiger or a mammoth, and then suddenly they built really big pyramids simultaneously all over the earth, and they used really, now that we're looking backwards at it, really odd size. Why did they use that giant hard basalt? You know, like, why did they use that really hard rock, but then all the rocks around it are like 5 pounds, and there's a 5,000 ton couple stone blocks in the middle, but then that's normal, that's how they built it. And why is it that the Aztecs are saying that the gods built Machu Picchu and it's finished with river rock, but yet all the construction is, you know, basically in quotes laser cut, polygonal, cymatic, frequency wave busting, you know, earthquake managing stone, and we have this same construction on Easter Island. We have the same construction in Angkor Wat. We have the same construction all around the world. And we shrugged it off and went, yeah, about 6,000 years ago, all this made sense and it worked. Well, in the last, even since 1992, okay, so you have Eric Von Däniken suggesting in Chariots of the Gods in 1962, 64, whatever it was, I know it's been like 46 years, but he suggests, well, what if really they were dealing with alien technology that had fallen to the planet, and what if the Ark of the Covenant was, you know, was a paradigm shifter, right? But then more practically, you know, we have these religions that Westerners don't appreciate, like the Hindu Vedas and the scripts that say, well, the gods and humanity have been going at it for millions of years. And it's like, okay, well, that sounds kind of silly, but then wait a minute, hold on. We have Michael Cremo coming to the rescue with Forbidden Archaeology and a list of paleoanthropological finds showing, well, hey, this anatomically correct human being was this part of this human, or this human was found in a layer in the Red Crag at 2 million, 5 million, over at Table Mountain, 60 million years old in California. And all over, you have the minute paleoanthropology starts when archaeology stopped being find me a cool Victorian statue for my mantle, which is what archaeology was, and it wasn't about figuring out who we were. It was literally occupying Victorian and turn of the century people with giving them cool things to put on their mantle. They didn't watch the mummy, they collected the mummy. They had mummy unwrappings.
Yeah.
Which is tragic. But here we are with a society that's built on this it can't be stressed enough, that's built on this hard paradigm of, well, we're the most advanced we've ever been, so we have this filter. It is so then therefore easy to stare at a tic tac and obviously assume that if it's not a military secret program, and if the military is telling us, shit, this isn't ours, this is, hey, just so everybody knows, we've had a secret program. We've been watching UFOs, and we want your help. And we're really, no, really, this isn't disinformation. We're really telling you, this is the Navy, this is the Air Force, this is the Canadian government. There's 1 million people. I mean, well, not to exaggerate, there are a number of people who are ufologists that have been clearly invested in seeing all these disclosure paperworks, but you're only seeing what you want to see. They're only tabling the facts that they want you to see, or you're tabling facts that fit your theories. But if you table all the facts, we have a global missed chapter of very advanced, not just physical constructions, but human genetic abilities like superhumans like Wim Hof, conscious control of your immune system, and so we have these echoing religions saying, well, you know, you could be reincarnated, but what if the slivers of truths are we have a genetic signature which includes not, in quotes, junk genes, but zip files, and those past lives are not others' lives or your lives, they're actually global lives throughout a undescribed global history that right now in our suppressed population level, based on, because in the past, you know, we already talked about ancient engineered soil and maybe we should revisit it, but the idea is this entire planet was terraformed to the point where I think if you were accidentally, in quotes, deleted, you were able to be brought back. But what's remembered is wrap someone as a mummy, and when they get their time in the repair chamber, you know, we still got the body. But before it was just, you didn't feel good and it seemed like maybe you had cancer. But on that note, actually, I think I mentioned the term nanoarchaeology the last time we were on, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So here's an article from October 21st, 2020 from Science Daily. Genome archaeologists discover path to activate immune response against cancer. And there is nuclear DNA that the Max Planck Institute of Anthropology just instigated. Mind you, this is a process that's been around a couple years now. And what they've done is actually only need granules, dust, in a cave to identify Denisovan. Oh, that's a train for everyone listening. Because you're doing an authentic Jared interview if I'm in my studio and right next to the train tracks, which are 20 feet outside my window. So smart idea. I will change that in the future.
Comes by so often you won't even notice.
You know, a lot of people are into trains. You know, Richard Sirrett,
I love trains.
He said, yeah, Richard likes the trains too. So I'm just, you know, it's like we're just gonna have to deal with everyone who loves to interview around trains and then talk trains every now and then. My grandpa was a railroad detective. He actually worked on solving and managing the railroad's interests, while, you know, because they cross state lines and they handle all sorts of stuff. So this genome archaeology, you know, my idea of nanoarchaeologist was that, you know, eventually you'll send out a dust of nanobots and they'll scurry the sides of quarried stone that are making up villages and churches and things that the Catholic Church have taken, like, for example, in South America. And what they'll be able to do is create a, you know, like you send your nanobots out and they'll be able to ultimately collect three-dimensional information, chemical information, and now with nuclear DNA testing, you know, they went into a cave where they found a Denisovan bone, but the reality was the way mitochondrial testing has gone in the past. You need a tooth. You need enough material in order to test something. And in this particular case, nuclear DNA testing means you literally need dust. And this has been happening. This is a technology that's been around now a couple of years, but it's making the news now. So just a few weeks ago, they had said, hey, underwater for Doggerland, we found the flora and fauna in sedimentary remains that date back 9,000 years under salt water. And then they just did an article about, we figured out Denisovan DNA and Neanderthal DNA from nuclear remnants within a cave, where we also had to separate it from 150 other flora, fauna, and animals. And we were able to identify in detail a genome of a Neanderthal in a cave, where you have to look now, where I had said the overall topic is nanoarchaeology. The reality is that, or you can call it DNA archaeology, but here we are with an article, and they're calling themselves genome archaeologists. And what they're doing is they're looking at ancient embedded elements in our human DNA that, when activated, kill cancer as an infection. And when you start tabling those facts of not just a genetic ability that literally allows you to just get rid of cancer. What if we're looking at a society, a global society, that had the ability to eliminate disease as a norm, and your body had ability to be programmed to self-manage it? Here we are with this disclosure coming. We're talking about a society that, if they're managing and measuring waves, frequencies, energies, the human genome, terraforming the planet with engineered soil, which we can dig into. Here's one more mind-blowing thing, barely into the topics, which is, what are we looking at if not, in quotes, aliens that show up and people say, well, they're reptilians, and they're grays, and they're Pleiadians, and there's like a whole speak out there now about what these aliens are. There's a whole vernacular. It's gone from science or potential science to a belief system. It's not there's all these people talking about, like, well, where did you get your info? Oh, from a download. And how do you argue with someone when they're talking, when they're in their version of the Holy Spirit? How do you argue with that? You can't. If somebody says, right?
Well, and and I'll do you one better, because I'm a big believer in support what you like, and I don't have cable or anything like that. If there's a show that I want to watch, I will buy the show on a platform, so that I can directly support those producers, that kind of stuff. And what I'm a huge fan of Coast to Coast. Love George Norrie. Always have, since he was a stand-in for Art Bell back in the day. And so Gaia is one of the things that I purchase and pay for. I pay for the Gaia network. There is some great programming on there. There's some fantastic stuff in the realm of meditation, all that kind of stuff. But I was watching a series the other day, and I'm a binge watcher. I'll sit down and, while I'm programming websites, have like three or 4 hours of it going, and just absorbing information. And it was a show about ancient civilizations. I cannot remember the title of the show offhand, but as they were going through it, and talking to some great people who were on, History Channel shows, all kinds of stuff, and then randomly up pops somebody who has spoken to the god Osiris through their channeled mediumship. And at that point, it's like, oh, it just got really hard now.
It does. I'm sorry, it does.
That's not to say that I do not know people who channel, who talk to interdimensional beings, things like that. But I don't know that I'm necessarily going to be taking a lot of historical point off of that. Do I think that it's maybe a great place to start looking? You know, like even the work of Edgar Cayce, stuff like that in that realm where he pulled information from the Akashic record, things like that. Sure. I'm not going to say let's discount that as something to investigate. But to call it as
That was
fact,
well put.
To call it as fact, I have a hard time with. But
I think what you said, I agree with you. I just want to I want people to focus in on what you, I want you to finish. I'm so sorry to interrupt,
No.
but I do think it's super important that people revisit what you just said. It is worthy of investigation.
Yes.
That's different than belief.
Yes, absolutely, and exactly the fact. And I mean, hey, that's the whole point of this show. Is these are conversations worth having? They're worth having.
Yes.
The fact that ESP exists, the fact that these things are there, like, hey, I'm a big believer in the work that has been done by Caroline Corey. You know, and if it can be replicated again, like groundbreaking, ground shaking in the world of science work, and connecting, like you're saying, to that genetic part that's inside of all of us, that untapped part of the brain, that untapped potentiality and personal resonance that we have with the world around us. So,
yeah, and I know I've mentioned it before, and a lot of people who listen to me have probably heard me say this, but I think it's important to revisit, and I call it the blinky board. And you know, when you bang on the blinky board and you get an orange light on the left and you get a red light on the right, I have modified the blinky board theory though, so here's how it goes. Now, is that, you know, if you bang on the blinky board for 1,000 years or 100 years and you've been praying at the blinky board or creating traditions, and God forbid it works 50 or 60% of the time in your favor, hell, even 40%. If somebody walks up and says, why are you banging on the control panel of a 747? That's a plane. And then they look at you and yell heretic and burn you at the stake. The problem is that when you're dealing with a technology that you, in your life experience, in your family of origin story, you grew up believing, well, it's a faith-based, you know, it's a demon, it's an angel, it's a Jesus thing, it's a Buddha thing, it's a Hindu thing, fill in the blank. But it's when you have a reaction from the blinky board and you don't understand the level of advanced genetic and terraformed and energy technology that we were once capable of, you bang on the blinky board and get what appears to you to be a very spiritual and esoteric response, and you say, well, you know, my religion's true, or my faith is true, and my beliefs are true, and or my ability is this or that, and it's founded in this. And in reality, it's like we don't understand enough of our history, and we've been reduced to, I do believe we are in safe mode. We have a 10 to 15%. We keep saying, oh yeah, you know, humans are only 10 to 15% conscious. Well, I don't think that's how we were. I think that's what we've devolved into.
Yes.
I mean, we're basically warlocks.
Ooh. Interesting
I know.
point. Explore that real quick, because I don't think a lot of people really understand the concept warlock in the way that you're using it.
Did that not just like it terrify? Again, it dates me, but man, when I watched that as a kid, it terrified me.
I love that. That book was amazing. I still love it.
And I know, and I do have the book. So we're talking about H.G. Wells, and we are talking. I don't know. You know what? I have to think, because and by the way, for everyone, I'm assuming you're thinking this too, but I'm talking about the original movie.
Yeah.
Not the one that I guess they did. What did they do? Another one in the late 90s?
Well, there was another one that was based on another book called Warlock, that was about an actual warlock, like. From the,
Oh no, no,
from the
no! I
times
think
of
I think
witchcraft.
I think the time machine wasn't the time machine done again in like the 90s or
Oh yeah,
2000s.
absolutely it was. Yes, it's one of my wife's
Yeah,
favorite
yeah, no, no.
movies.
Yeah, I just, so here we are, the Earth, it's, the time machine goes way in the future, and you end up in a society where, I just love it, very beautiful, nice human beings are being fed to these underground, devolved, nasty, slee stack sort of, I don't know, how would you describe them?
Yeah,
They're human, but
definitely.
they're
Slee stack is a great way to put it.
now I've referenced the Land of the Lost. I
That's
made
all
this
right.
worse for us than better. Okay, so we're talking that the world, after post-apocalyptic events, thousands of years in the future, apparently of beautiful humans on the surface, and they think that they're going to be brought somewhere nice or not, and they get brought into the earth to a devolved class of humanity that feeds on the humans that live on the surface. Half, you would think, implied from H.G. Wells out of spite, anger, power, and they just do it. They don't develop another food source, so they eat pretty humans that live on the surface.
Yeah.
In a nutshell. But it's this de-evolution after this massive cataclysm and abandonment of technology, and over, as the time machine accidentally goes in the future, it's thousands of years, and it's a very devolved setting. And this is basically what's happened to us, is that pre-Toba, pre-75,000, we're talking, they say plus or minus, so 74 to 76,000 years ago, this super volcano just wrecks humanity and maybe reduces the actual, and again, the problem is, here's the problem with all these theories. They're just theories, but it is a super event. It is a huge event, and from the genomes that have been tested, they say, okay, well, 1,000 to 10,000 breeding pairs, so 2 to 20,000 humans are left on the planet. However, approximately 60-ish thousand years, well, and in some respects, 70,000 years ago, post this apocalyptic event, you have Denisovan, which is Denisovan and Neanderthal used to be genetically, for the latest news says they were one race, and that they split from each other, and then Denisovan and Neanderthal and humans, and in quotes, another 14% of this new human, which is what we are, this mix, we're this entire mix. But of all the mixes, there's a 14% other mystery human race that we don't have any eyes on at all, along with Denisovan and Neanderthal. So we're talking 3 separate things, and this is just what we know as of today. All said, screw it, we're the only people left on the planet. We got to keep breeding, or let's get along, or they lived in their groups or their isolated groups, et cetera, et cetera. And this is over 70,000, this is post-apocalyptic event. But meanwhile, you did have a society that built with cymatic, earthquake-proofing, disaster-proof, megalithic buildings. Their seismic metamaterials were not limited to just stone. It was likely clothing, plastics. The Romans have a legend of flexible glass, and that's rarely talked about, that they had flexible glass. And there's a lot behind that, but the point is there's remnants. P. Reese, the map that shows the unfettered coast of Antarctica with no ice on it, which is currently under a kilometer, right? So there's all these technologies and sciences left over now that say this worldwide culture must have retreated and mostly failed, but some of them lived. And what we might see then is this, they're collecting and rebuilding, and they're sharing the planet with what's now a limited human population, so they can rebuild, but they can do it in places where, they're not going to be as bugged, but they're not going to be as seen. But then you have what's now left of a wiped out surface human population. They're not running with the same technology, but they're adapting, they're reusing. The Greeks said we were not here first, the gods were at the Temple of Delphi, for instance, and they built the Greek culture on what was a remnant of a more advanced building and construction, and so are the Egyptians. The dynastic Egyptians are building. The higher you go, you have mud brick. The lower you go, you have the Osirion, which is not only in size. When you hear the word megalithic, it needs to start conjuring visions of very advanced construction in the shapes, the cutting, the polishing, surface textures, as in epoxies and finishes, things that are very odd that show up all around the world. Some of it there's been no material sciences for, yet there's been incredibly extensive testing on the surface finishes to the millionths of an inch, the measurements for these. Flinders Petrie, one of the fathers of Egyptology, had the same problems with this in the 1800s. He says the core drills, like the Flinders Petrie core drill 7, he found it in Egypt, and he's like, this is problematic. It's a continuous, not interrupted. It is not debunked by that British TV show that did a horrible job, but there is a core drill. To sum it up for everyone who wants to Google away while we're talking, the reality is it will take you a little more time to find out that Flinders Petrie found a number of things around, like at the step pyramid, there is a precision box, and he thinks that it's the most precision thing ever found in Egypt. And he said this is problematic to the story of the Egyptians, because as you get newer in a society, you're supposed to get more advanced. Yet the older you go, and more importantly, the pre-dynastic Egyptians have the most advanced cut, fit, and from vases that look machined to what I was getting to, which is this core drill, which has been very famously talked about and been looked at by Christopher Dunn, the engineer that wrote, the Giza power plant and lost ancient technologies. Christopher Dunn's done some great work on that, but I myself have a couple friends that are engineers, machinists, that are looking at it also to continue to get collaborative peer-reviewed work. In this case, you need different disciplines. In this case, you need a forensic geologist, somebody like Scott Walter, and you need machinists to keep looking and corroborating Christopher Dunn's work. And so I have two machinists looking at this core drill. Is a continuous core drill where the rate of pressure and spin is able to be calculated from this core. It's like they had drilled into a rock to create a pipe hole or a fitting. And when Flinders Petrie in the 1800s, at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, is pragmatically looking at this, he quite extensively writes on it and says, well, this core drill and these other ones I'm finding are problematic because based on the continuous spin of the drill, it appears that this is running, and this is now in 2020 terms, the drill ran at a width, and it's not a width that we have. Two, it turned at a rate 500 times faster than any drill we have today for stone.
Yeah.
So we add all this up, and what we have is a society that, if you were a remnant of that, if you were just on a cruise ship and you're the last remnants of a highly advanced race, well, now the game is, once you come out of these mysterious underground rock-cut ruins and tunnels and protective areas, and there's only a fraction of your population left, how long is it going to take you to rebuild? You might be aware of computers and Wi-Fi, but you might not get them back until you collect all the lost technology and re-engineer it. And if you're not, if you're a user of a technology, you're not the manufacturer. And even if you're a programmer, you're not someone who knows how to do actual mineral mining and separate heavy metals of different kinds or materials and coppers and nickels and to mix them all into a usable metal or to create a mainframe or a laptop or a motherboard. That's all specific skill sets. I had a mathematician, he's a PhD mathematician. He goes, Jared, we have books of mathematical equations in order to figure out volumes of water or a substance. So if like you are going to create a rocket and you want to put gas in the rocket, well, you need to know what is the theoretical, or say you're going to send a rocket somewhere and you're going to like pick something up. You need to figure out how dense a material is into a tank, and you need to know how much volume it can hold down to like the milliounce. Well, there are equations that were developed for this, and they took not a couple, but they took many very talented mathematicians a long time to build these volume tables and equations. And if you lost all that, you would need a really long time, like a few hundred years in mathematician years, and smart people to play with these equations to get the ability to discern those things back. And that has to do with engineering. That has to do with eigenvalues, not just pi, but eigenvalues. And when you're a society, it's like, oh, you know, the eigenvalue pi keeps showing up in the Great Pyramid. And the Great Pyramid is actually 8-sided. And it seems to be a giant power plant, which would have to do with energies and frequencies, which seems to be maybe why it's built with pi, which is an eigenvalue. But they're like, no, the first jump is it's aliens. And we hurry up right back to all these examples, ignoring the details and ignoring the layers of earth that all of this is found in, and the technology, and the not just to build or move a single stone, but the genome history ourselves of not only how we've survived, but the ability to cure ourselves from cancer and have conscious control of our immune system and being fully conscious. And we get blurred by these post-Diluvian, as in the post-Younger Dryas, 6,000-year stories of Jesus and Christianity and these modern esoteric belief systems, and we blur our lines even further with these alternative researchers now saying, and you know, being very excited that, well, maybe it's not those religions, it's aliens, and there's saucers, just like my favorite 1950s popcorn-eating saucer movie, and well, it must be an alien. But if you control the human genome because you have messed with it for 1 million years, because you've been here for 100 million years, well, then you don't need to look human if you're doing 0-point turns in a, you know, tic-tac. You might need to be short and translucent.
Well, and, you know, even that's... We're going to be talking about so many things next week, technology-wise, with Mike Turber. But one of the things that I have been posting and talking about in the Dudes and Beer group, and I've just pulled up an article from phys.org. This is from 2018. Better than holograms, a new 3D projection into thin air. One of the enduring sci-fi moments. I mean, it's talking about basically being able to literally project a hologram that is viewable 360 degrees by an audience. So
I think that that's
in addition to that, there's an article from military.com from 2006 talking about holograms being used in the battlefield, about how they were supposed to be in some of the new fighter craft employing holographic projectors, things like that.
Yeah.
There's
and
even
I know the Chinese. Did you see that Chinese did that dragon in 3D with nanodust in that stadium?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
You know, it's around the corner. The world could end up being a very living. The world could end up being a very Matrix-looking world.
Yeah.
You won't know if you're looking at a real person walking by you or is it a hologram.
Yeah. And I mean the fact is they've already got touchable holograms.
Oh, no way. I did not know that.
Oh,
no,
yeah.
I did not know that.
I've looked it up so many times, actually, that whenever I put touchable in, holograms popped right up. But here it is from Reuters. Japanese scientists create touchable holograms, 2015.
Okay, I love doing this stuff because when you're doing, like, I'm working on my next 3 books, by the way. I mean, I like the amount of research. I mean, let me just give you an idea. Jennifer Deo, the archaeologist, and I, and she co-hosts on Not Aliens, and we're working on our working title for a trilogy is Astronomers, Mariners, and Miners: The Age of Megalithic Industry and Exploration. That's our trilogy capstone title, working title. And to work on that and simultaneously piece together nanoarchaeology, nuclear DNA testing of ancient remains. The more we move in the future, the more this technology, like touchable holograms, you're talking about a technology that really could be echoing remnants of something in the past. And I'm always trying to look forward to new technology to see how can it point me new eyes to look at old technology. That's phenomenal.
Here it is, using femtosecond laser technology. The researchers developed, quote, fairy lights, a system that can fire high-frequency laser pulses that last 1/1,000,000 of 1/1,000,000,000 of a second. The pulses respond to human touch so that when interrupted, the hologram's pixels can be manipulated in midair.
Oh, this is to someone in a different time. That's Merlin.
That's
Merlin the
literally
magician.
Merlin. Even now, dude, that's Merlin.
Yep,
that is Merlin.
That would be
status.
what people. That's Harry Potter stuff right there. And for people who, and this is what I mean about people's experiences. I'm very serious about people not either discounting or feeling bad about their personal experience with what they think might be paranormal or spiritual.
Hey, like I told you in the last episode, and like my audience has heard, I still to this day believe that God spoke to me, like, uniquely. So, I doubt nobody's experience.
Right, and those experiences are people interact with this giant blinky board, and the reality is it's not. When I tried to start deconstructing it in a technical way to say, like very advanced human engineered it, it's not. We look at nature and we go, okay, well, there's natural and there's artificial, and I don't think people can totally get their heads around the idea that this, in quotes, natural environment is actually bio mechanical. It's not. It's not natural. It's also like we look at a tree and go, that's random trees, and that's just it's essentially, okay, I don't want to say a computer program gone awry, but it's a unconscious safe mode part of a system that had great abilities, and synesthesias are one of those things I point to in the human ability. Right now there's an estimate that 20-something to 30% of the human population has synesthesias, and those are where you hear a word that might be like red or blue, or you might see a number, or you might smell something and see a color or a number, or you can project three-dimensional images in front of your face. If somebody said like 1098-765, it could be spatial synesthesia, where the number that's the furthest away is far away and you're literally in front of you in your field of vision. And as you get to 1, it's like closest to your eyes. Or some people describe seeing fireworks, and it's been studied by Carl Jung. It's been studied by modern psychotherapy, neuroscientists. It was studied by the Greeks. I mean, synesthesias have been known, and they affect all 5 senses. There was a guy at the turn of the century that I talk about, because I mentioned synesthesias in my book as a lost ancient high technology of human ability, where not only can you pass memories to each other like that, we're not talking about like the elementary version is to say, well, instincts, it's like you push a bird out of a nest, it remembers it's got to fly. It's not like that. I mean, we also don't really speak bird. I mean, the mom could actually be saying, so I'm going to push you out and you're going to flap your wings. Okay, you'll be good. It's not like we know how birds actually talk. But the idea is that there's a very conscious system that we are also simultaneously, collectively, potentially encoding in a collective consciousness the magnetic aurora around us. That, in fact, I just read an article about the idea of there is actually a more current research work describing that our actual memories are stored within, and they've developed a new computer system that allows memory to be stored in a magnetic field, which we have one that personally encompasses us, and it's been photographed in something called Carillion photography. And not all Carillion photography is equal for those who are familiar with it. There is different, depending on the cameras and the way you're doing it, you're photographing the actual magnetic aurora that lives around you, and there's a collective one, and there is I think a system where it all ties together, where synesthesias allow you to also touch and sense and feel what someone else senses and touches and feels. And so it's a very complex system in a world where everything was very interconnected. You wouldn't need a cell phone, you wouldn't need a holographic image. You could touch, feel, and sense, or be present to a conversation and connected through engineered piezoelectric running soils from one end of the earth to the other without being there. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we're missing, or we're banging on the blinky board and getting a response that's a very valid response, but it's part of a system. It's it's like the joke about the Millennium, I'm thinking now for the first time ever of Han Solo saying, yeah, the Millennium Falcon's fine, and then he has to bang on the control panel before it works.
Yeah.
It does what it's supposed to do, but it ain't because he banged on it, but it did, kind of. And that's kind of how we're kind of like trolling around right now as warlocks on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah. And, it's, for me, it's interesting to look at all these things coming out. It's interesting, like I said, the whole focus of this show is to have conversations that are uncomfortable to have. I am fully a believer in life elsewhere, an intelligent life elsewhere.
You could gamble and win on that because there's too much universe for there to not be other life. Yeah. There's just too much.
Yeah. And for me, what is happening right now echoes me back to a conversation that I had when this show really started having guests like you and Mike Turber and others on talking about these things, when they said everything that I know from the people that I am in contact with in different ranks is that we will be led down a path to believe that something is happening. And it was basically the concept of Operation Bluebeam that he was laying out, which is not a given plan, anybody, but definitely one of those theories that has been floated around that, hey, would the powers that be, possibly float the idea of an alien invasion for means of control?
Yeah, it really wouldn't take much. I mean, we're just not that advanced, which is why I think Voyager having like a little map to say, hey, if you're looking to enslave an alien race, here's where we're at, and here's how dumb we are, because here's the technology we use. So here you go.
Here's our genetic code.
Yep. And so if you're looking, to come anywhere and deal with some really dumb, some semi-ascension cattle, here we are.
Yeah.
I've never understood the idea that no, anybody who is advanced enough to come here wouldn't enslave us. And I'm like, yeah, there's no intergalactic Hitler somewhere. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, statistically, there's everything probable.
And in addition to that, not only statistically everything being probable, as we've been showing, even right now, I've got the Google patent up on screen right now, for a system and method for laser-induced plasma for infrared homing missile countermeasure. The abstract, a method where a laser beam is configured to generate a laser-induced plasma filament, or LIPF, and the LIPF acts as a decoy to detract a homing missile or other threat from a specific target. And quite literally, when you start going through and looking at the diagrams, it's like a floating sphere in the middle of the air is what it looks like on FLIR. Very, very similar to what we are seeing in videos. Absolutely wild. Like, there's all the calculations for the peak plasma density to make it happen. All that kind of stuff. So the fact is, are the videos real? Yeah, that's a video. We took it. That's literally the only thing that any government entity has come out and said. Is that,
right,
yes, that is a video, and yes, we took that.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre, but sometimes people ask me, they're like, well, it'd be pretty terrible. Like, some people finally get it and they go and they get they head, and the question goes to this. It's like, well, it'd be pretty terrible if our ancient relatives were like experimenting on us and not helping us. Like, wouldn't we help everyone? And it's like, that's why the book was titled "It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us," because again, who wants to know that the actual remnant human race is here, treats us like the 150 tribes that we keep letting do horrible things to each other in the woods and the jungles and the deserts. And we're like, well, we have to respect them. We need to leave them where they're at. And it's like, well, I don't really respect female genital mutilation. Yeah. And I really think that needs to be ended as a worldwide, like, for all the things we have with world hunger, why don't we put that one at the top of the list? And instead, you have this, who could then therefore imagine a very advanced human race that, what are they supposed to do? Pop over for a public announcement with all the news agencies and say, yeah, look, we've been here for, 100 million years, and actually, so this whole planet was connected. We were a global society. We never died. We lived indefinitely. Well, to be honest, we screwed it up. We screwed everyone. We murdered just about, by the way, there weren't 8 billion people on the planet. There was 800 billion people on the planet, and nobody died. Everything lived in harmony, and everything was amazing. We were astroplaning. We were colonizing other planets. We sent out probes. Everything went to crap, and, well, we have the cure for cancer, but, Bill thought you guys should have religion, and then, you took that the wrong direction. And we don't let him come and visit you anymore. But then, we use you guys for experiments, and then we thought maybe we could fix it. So that's why we keep experimenting, but we can't fix it. And we tried, but surprise, great-great-grandma's here for dinner for Christmas. What, it's like, there's just like it just looks like a dick move, no matter how you look at it. Yeah. I have tried for years to think this out now, over the course of just working out all the math and the science and, why would they leave? Like, and here's the other thing. It's a little more diabolical. I mean, it wasn't the best, the brightest, or the leaders that made it. I mean, whether it's Toba that erupted 75,000 years ago that did it, or the echoing slivers of truths in the Hindu Vedas that describe the gods having what appears to be nuclear weaponized war, or even ancient aliens bringing some popularity back to that lithograph from Nuremberg and that aerial battle over the Baltic and the edge of Germany over Nuremberg, that 1,000 medieval people witnessed what appeared to them to be an aerial combat. They didn't know how to describe it, but that's what we are interpreting this encounter. Like, clearly these remnant populations may have been competing for resources, may have become isolated themselves over hundreds or thousands of years, or deferred in opinion about how to treat the remnant surviving human populations that were dynastic peoples, and they didn't agree on it, and we're assuming that they all got along, but there's a likely possibility that these are the users of the technology, not the leaders of the technology or the peoples of ancient advanced humans. These may not have been the most pious, or over time were not allowed to be the most pious because it was survival. And so we have an unknown but very unfortunately uneasy and very shady narrative to put back together, and that's exciting and terrifying, which includes this disclosure.
I think it's interesting that you bring up the fact of we have a narrative to put back together, because that's absolutely the case. There is so much gap, period. And once again, folks, am I discounting the fact that what we are seeing on these videos could be something otherworldly? No, I'm not discounting that. I'm just saying that a 98 to 95% probability is that is our or other technology of this earth. Could it have been something reverse engineered from technology from elsewhere? Sure. Could it be something recovered from previous technology we had? Sure. You know,
I agree with all of it. Yeah, it's the likelihood is a technology that that's the worst of it, is you have advanced. You have, and I say advanced, I mean these are not humans. These are us. It's worse. It's us. These are us, and they have technology genetically and external technology and internal technology still activated, I think, within them that allow them to either not appear human based on eyewitness accounts. They look like aliens. Well, that's not to say, it's not saying they're actually alien, but they may wear a physical form like we wear a job suit. I dress like a fireman, I'm a fireman. I dress like a policeman, I'm a policeman. I dress like I fly and run circles around Tic Tacs or around F-22s because I can fly a Tic Tac. Well, I am short, translucent, and have direct mind control of my complete infrared enabled breathing, Mach 22 machine. And that is a machine that interfaces with me through my skin and my larger eyes, and that means that I don't get to look like I would if I was walking into the country bar in Kentucky. And that doesn't mean I'm alien, and it doesn't mean that you're looking at, again, outside of military advanced technologies that have been developed. Did they develop them from unintentionally crashed things? Exactly. Not, we did, they did not desire us to have them, but after the nuclear age, I think it went from esoteric secret clubs, whether you want to say it's I don't know anything about, and I'm saying that for the Illuminati, I don't know anything about them. I don't know anything about, like whether you want to watch it, you can think of a million TV shows but I can tell you there were some very large religious organizations like the Catholic Church that has a great investment in not revealing the truth, in not allowing ancient peoples and their histories to be told because it's contrary to the faith. And we see it over and over and over. The invasion of South America, the loss of indigenous peoples, not just through germs and disease, but through building, there's whole monastery and churches built on the ruins. One of the largest pyramids in the world has a church smack dab on the top of it in Peru. Yeah. I mean, it's a systematic procedure where maybe there is a secret organization within the secret organization that knows, hey, we know exactly what this is. This is advanced ancient human ruins that predate the Christ story we're saying. And, there's something to this technology, and we should keep it for ourselves. And we have zealots that are in the fold that they go out and do it based on a belief system. But we know better. In this organization, we're also going to have another subsect that goes out and collects the technology, and that's all fine and dandy until you develop nuclear powers and the groups that handled World War I and II, and now you have nations with technology that are well aware, based on their own diggings, their own bunker buildings, and therefore their own run-ins with underground rock-cut, what appears to be laser precision ruins, which have been found, to your point from the beginning of this conversation. There are ruins that are not just underground, but they are extensively complex in their construction, and they show great antiquity and they show that they were part of not a primitive society, but a more advanced one. And most of Egypt, not just Turkey and all of Europe, but Muhammad Ibrahim as a good example. This is a place that is not just underground, as in dig up a lot of sand and you get to underground Egypt. No, literally what he meant was Egypt is built underground, and built underground in a way that shows extensive advanced constructions, as if there was a worldwide global society that was always ready to be frozen, burned, weaponized Sodom, Gomorrah, fire and brimstone liked, or scalar weaponed, and they were always prepared for it all around the world. And that is not the narrative we're told. That's not what we're described. So everyone's sitting around and saying a million times over on a lot of popular radio shows and TV shows, disclosure about aliens, disclosures about UFOs. It reinforces an incorrect perspective. It's not aliens. It's an advanced human race. And is it possible that there's interdimensional space traveling aliens? Sure. But do they need minerals?
Or is it possible that there's interdimensional space traveling us?
Exactly. And why would you not have your why wouldn't you have your own I just think it's just, I don't know, I try to get my head around it. Why would you not call this home? It's so easy to hide from us. We're looking at devices, we're looking at ships moving, and I use Hyperion, the tree, as an example. And the penguins in the Danger Islands in Antarctica. It's a super, there's these Adelie penguins that, it's a super colony between 1.3 and 1.7 million penguins. And it's a super colony on the Danger Islands that no one noticed until there was a satellite image for it. And it's like, how do you miss 1.3 to 1.7 million black and white penguins walking around? Even if there's not that many people in Antarctica, a lot of people like penguins, a lot of documentaries, I've seen them all. Yeah. And the reality is, you don't miss a whole migrating super colony for the last 200 years of anthropology and any type of biological research. Like, for all the people who love penguins, you guys, no one noticed almost 2 million penguins. And that's a modern example. And another one is in 2008, we discovered the tree that we named Hyperion. It is a redwood that is 60 feet in diameter. It's 379 feet tall. It's taller than Big Ben. It's taller than the Statue of Liberty. And no one noticed it. No loggers, no indigenous people brought it up, no anthropologists, nobody who likes to hike in the woods. Nobody found Hyperion until 2008. It's 379 feet tall and 60 feet in diameter. And if you Google it or internet search it, whatever's on our paradigm right now, and you look at Hyperion, you're like, oh, it doesn't look that tall. Like, one of the main photos that will come up, you'll look at it, you'll go, oh, it looks kind of tall. And then you have to step back and realize that you're looking at pine trees that are below it that are 100 and 120 feet tall. The trees around it are 100 to 120 feet tall. And when you look at this, we are not very acutely capable of, if you have a story of aliens coming out of Lake Titicaca, the Bermuda Triangle, the Dragon Triangle out of, that touches the southern tip of Japan, the Arctic and or Antarctic triangles. You have a number of magnetic anomaly places where UFOs are seen. There are a number of places they frequent. They're constantly off the coast of California. There's constant sightings by fighter groups, pilots, the big Tic Tac fleet that the Mexican Air Force saw. I mean, there's a list that's we can't get to it in just this meeting, but the reality is that UFOs are constantly seen, and are we seeing a foreign entity from another or interdimensional space, or a revisiting human is the overall point. But are they really just accidentally being seen, or they just don't care because you aren't going to be able to track them or know where they go? At the end of the day, they can come and go as they wish. They're benevolent in the sense that they allow us to continue to, take most of the earth, and do they really just end up in a more smaller select group? And again, if they ultimately end up, if the military points, this is what I would look to for disclosure, and this is something I have not talked about on any show, not any show I've hosted or interviewed on. This is it. I think if anything comes from the disclosure for everyone out there to discern, first, what you read or what you hear from the disclosure itself that's coming, check it against your own genetic memory and your own BS meter. And you may only know if it's wrong or right, but if it rings closer to true or wrong, check it against the ideas of whatever they say. What are the between the lines points about? Is it that we're describing an alien, or are we describing an ancient human that has a technology because that's what our historical record in the ground and in our genome shows, that there would be very likely a human here still capable of doing things? And in the sightings, how do we discern from the information they disclose? Is it a foreign entity to the solar system, or is it a foreign entity only in time? And is it really just one of us?
Yeah, that is absolutely what we have to consider as we move forward as a people, as a humanity, with this topic, period. And it really does take that open mind, that open heart, and even the willingness, Jared, to look at things possibly opposite the way that the community is in general, and even the disclosure community in general is looking at them. I would not say that the concept that I have thrown out this evening is a popular one.
No, you know what? It's like, at first I was worried about it. By the way, I was worried about it at first, and I'll tell you now, after a year, I was worried about throwing out, like, I didn't want to. It's not about crushing ufologists or saying they're wrong. It's absolutely, we're all going to be wrong on some level, because none of us have been fed the truth. I don't even think the governments and secret organizations like they've even shared with each other the correct data. There's so much disinformation, and our ancestors are not being honest with us at all. And I think my fear is that they've even outright manipulated or made sure that we wouldn't know the truth. And then what's even worse, again, is we're dealing with people that they're being avoidant, and that shows some adversarialness to it. So I'm not, there's a number of reasons to be cautionary, but as far as telling people who believe they've been abducted, it's not that they weren't, or it's not that, again, UFO is the word's a neat thing, and the general topic, that's kind of, unfortunately, it's turned into a little bit of a religion versus, again, it's great theories, but you have to table all the facts. And it's hard if you start with what I've written on, and if you start at Not Aliens, or the audio book, or if you start with the new release coming, or if you go with like just these dialogues I hope you and I are going to keep having, and on the shows I host. I think I think we're going to have a collective dialogue, and we're going to change the narrative in a positive direction that's going to put the light on the facts.
Yeah, precisely. And that's just it. You have to come at it with an open mind. You have to come at it with an open heart. And you really have to come at it with the attitude of, hey, I could be wrong.
Right. And nobody wants to hear. I honestly think a lot more people are going to be bummed at the idea that, we're still talking really advanced people. I mean, we're still talking about Ray Kurzweil comes out with The Singularity is Near in 2008, and that is a worthy read. I mean, this is considered, he's like a modern Leonardo da Vinci. He holds over 200 patents. He's on the board at Google. He's the reason they created Google University. Ray Kurzweil is a bright guy, and this man writes in a seminal work. And mind you, I can tell everyone I'm not a huge economics fan, and I will tell you there's about 100 pages of economic models that I can go ahead and skip. I would tell you to skip them, but he's giving the very economic reason why the singularity will happen within so many years. So that part's worthy. But the point about the singularity is when man and machine become one, and he was looking at nanotechnology, including Wi-Fi enabled nanofactories and nanobots that could enter single cells. And all of this is technology that was well documented by 2008. And it is a worthy book, but it covers how far apart we are as we are going into the world of, you and I are living from the day of banana seat and pre-BMX bike to where we are now to quantum computers in our lifetime.
To quantum computers for $5,000, man.
Right,
you can buy
pretty
a
soon there'll be
quantum computer
watches
from China for $5,000 right now. I
They'll
know
be
people
wearing
that have
them
a
soon.
Mac that costs more money than that.
I know, and pretty soon 3D printing.
Yeah.
Right? 3D printing and nano factories that 3D print, nanobots, nano factories built out of, and by 2008, we had nano factories. They built nano factories that were 80 to 150 atoms in size that produced smaller nanobots that would go do things. They were doing that successfully. That was completed work that's now almost 15 years old, and as far as publishing goes. So how long were they working on it before that? And commercially speaking, we are getting the scraps. When we think of, we joke about it, but we are as a people in general getting the scraps. But I do think it's very important for the gray state and the parties that be, there has to be a constant reminder of the collective human consciousness and the theories that, the people in the woods, they don't matter, or we could use 33% less of the population. And I need to warn, and you need to look, as we look instead of the theories, but if we look at the facts of it, I think the human population was much larger than it is now. And I do believe that total collective human RAM and collective consciousness is part of our power, and it's part of our ability. And I think in a more conscious time, it was quite an incredible ability, and it's one that we're reactivating quite accidentally, which I think makes the people who have been habitual in their power control now nervous. But the reality is that a fully conscious, fully connected, large human RAM society is invaluable to our future and our health and our lives. And it's something that's difficult to be patient with when you're like, well, this group's a bad group and that group's a bad group, and I wish these people weren't here, or those people. The reality is that, we need to manage individuals that are bad, but we need to be conscious, as sappy as this sounds, that all human life matters, and that we really need to, when we have the capability to feed the planet, one, we should do it, and two, we think, for those who are kind of like I'm cynical or don't care, well, I think you need to, because the reason those nano switches and those quantum computers and the cures of cancer and reactivating genetic cancer killing DNA and all of that's there is because we're collectively waking up, because we have the RAM to do it, whether sleeping or awake.
Yeah.
It's a,
well, it's that we've gotten back to the point of having the bandwidth to do it.
Yep, and that's what's missing. That's something that people are not. And again, it's difficult because everyone might have a different piece of it, but if you're only 10 to 15% conscious, it's difficult for you to look at it and go, well, I don't know if that's true, but I'm going to go with the Georgia Guidestones, and we should kill everybody off, but for 500 million people. You arrogant, hubristic
Yeah.
What a bunch of crap.
Yeah.
That drives me. It's like, show me the playbook for how many mosquitoes and how many Neanderthal we're supposed to have too, you jackass. And that's the thing that's missing. It's so simple. It's so simpleton to say this is the way the world. You don't even. We keep discovering 3,500 to 5,000 things that are alive a year for at least the last 40 years. We have been discovering not just like bacteria and fungus, although a good fragment of that is true, but we find birds. We found an otter that we thought was dead in the Amazon. It stuck its head up, and I saw a picture. It looked like a seal. It was so big, and it was like some paleo otter that should have been died off, and it wasn't, and we didn't know. I mean, so we do find things that we've known of that turn out to still be alive, but I'm talking about full-on birds, bats, fish, weird creatures from the bottom of the ocean to the heights of the Andes that we did not know existed in every kind of species format. And there's some hubristic, arrogant simpleton that puts up a bunch of stones that says, here's how many humans should be here. No way. That pisses me off to no end. I mean, that's a side note. I digress.
No.
I apologize.
And just to give you an idea, I'm going to pop it up on screen right now. I just went to the Dudes and Beer Facebook group and did a search for extinct. It's on screen right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. There are, within the last month, 6 articles on the Dudes and Beer group about extinct animals that have been found again. Thought to be extinct bird egg found. All kinds of stuff. Like, these things are regular. So yeah, to think that it's been found when we have not even explored 70% of our known ocean.
Exactly.
It is utter hubris to say that something is not.
Right. And to assume that you think you know what the Earth should look like. We don't have a full paleoanthropological record. We don't have a full flora and fauna record. And what's a full record? I mean, and again, was it just cruising along all random, or at one point was this really a giant terraformed epic global golf course?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we talked about stone spheres, and I know you touched on a Stanford study, and we talked these megalithic stone spheres. Now they're golf ball to 64 tons in size, and they're not natural concretions. They were made by man. And on your dinosaur extinct egg note, they thought that there were stone spheres that David Hatcher Childress brings up in all his lectures about. They were digging for trolley. They were making trolley tracks, and as they were digging into some hillsides, they were coming up with these giant stone spheres, and they theorized that they were dinosaur eggs. I mean, they were stone concretions, but they theorized that they were dinosaur eggs at first when they found them. It's just hilarious. And again, there's this not awake. It's almost like I don't know how to do it. I guess I would say it's like an ostrich plan. There's a point where some people just want to get out. They want a boat, a trailer hitch. They want a cabin. They just want to have some good times. They don't want to know the truth. Yeah. They don't want to know. They just need to explain why the dog died to the kids, and they got to keep moving to overtime.
Yeah.
But my argument to everyone in the positive is that when you do take it on, you're taking on what possibly is how to cure cancer, and your conscious inflammatory response, and also your peace of mind and your connectiveness. Not a woo-woo one, but maybe you might feel it's woo-woo, but an actual connection with the earth, and your presence to going boating, to enjoying that time at the cabin, may go from a dreamy esoteric to a hardwired reality, because the way we're wired, waking up out of sleep mode is actually not more worrisome and anxiety ridden, but could be filled with more fulfillment in all those layers of your life. But it's not in our paradigm to say it that way. It's just it's aliens, and there's a disclosure, and it's going to be, or it's always going to go magically over the esoteric rainbow to now we'll all be more conscious and starving children will get fed. And it's not going to work like that if we don't make an effort.
Well, and that's just it. Regardless of what it is, it comes down to precisely what the Mayan prophecy was for 2012, which was something is changing, a tide is turning. Whether or not it's for the best or the worst is utterly up to you.
Right.
And it is that application of the technology, as we said earlier, whether it's refound technology that we as humanity have just forgotten how to leverage, for instance, or whether it's that genetic memory that you were talking about that we have forgotten how to leverage.
Right, and we might be experiencing it in dreams, or like after a traumatic shock. It could be a moment through, maybe through some ayahuasca or some use where you tap into it through, again, banging on the blinky board. You tap into it, but it's not in an explainable way. It might be uncomfortable for you, but just as a side note for people, tell someone about it, talk about it.
Yeah.
Try to discern what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. The lack of exploration is the problem. The unwillingness of exploration, especially once you've been exposed to something. To me,
dialoguing
it's exactly. It's an imperative, and even today, I was doing some work, as I was telling you before the show, with Curious Realm, what we are evolving into come December. And that's exactly what I was writing in our story, was that there was something lacking for me. And the whole reason that I started Dudes and Beer was because I realized that my world and my paradigm had been built around conversation, built around building conversation, whether it was when I did youth work and I taught kids, or whether it was when I was working with adults, or when I was a producer for radio, what have you. It was all about facilitating that conversation. And once I had that, quote, burden of knowledge, I could not share it. I couldn't not have the conversation. For me, it was almost a moral imperative to have the conversation.
And it's only grown from there. And then this new title, I mean, are people, you said you've been pounding it out there, but are people aware of your new title?
Yeah, Curious Realm. We've been talking about it. We've been exposing our Facebook group to it, all that kind of good stuff. I've been getting some good response to it. So yeah, I mean, for me it's the fact of I can't not talk about these things. Like I said, for me it's a moral imperative. I have to have.
Well,
these
see, and you're unique.
conversations.
And no one's paying me to say this, but you are unique in the people I talk. Yeah, because if you're going to have a Dudes and Beer audience, they're half-ass cynical too, and
They are.
and so knowing what dudes there be and dudettes, the reality is that you are unique in that, and one of the things I enjoyed the minute you and I had met, even prior to doing shows, was that you are not just a interviewer, podcaster. You are, as when people describe in my bio, it says self-experimenter, and it's like, what is that? And it's having not just a desire to know the questions and to ask them, but to then experiment with the answers and to personally seek out these truths, not just from past experiences, but you're someone who's actually out there experimenting and seeking the answers to also share and expand on a collective, not just an esoteric knowledge base, but to something that can be applied to your day-to-day life, and that's unique.
Thank you. And I mean, I think a lot of that comes from, yeah, I did, as we had in our last conversation, the conversation about, yeah, I came from a religious upbringing, but once I found the difference between religion and spirituality, and the fact that the spirituality was what I carry into my day-to-day life from the teaching of the other, that became my path ultimately. Was that exploration of spiritual journey in and of itself, and that's where the experimentation comes from for me. So thank you. I appreciate that breakdown.
Well, yeah, and it's not a conclusive one, but I wanted to throw it out there because I think it is important. It's exciting to have this, although it's an interview and it's good for everyone, and it's great. It's a great dialogue, but it's these kind of conversations with these, with this chemistry of shared information and knowledge and life experience, where I think people can get their own. Doesn't matter where they are in their journey, the ideas that are here are, whether it's just a sounding board for what they were already thinking, but if there was a tipping point for them to go out and try going paleo, trying Wim Hof, doing something that has to do with an archaeological trip that they never thought they would take, to go visit something that, well, you know what, I don't want to be a tourist, but the truth is that we're all tourists, and the reality is that even if you're not going to an active archaeological site, you, with your connection to this existing collective consciousness and universe, may go to a site that has been visited by millions of tourists, and you may see something that no one else has ever seen. And I will give you one live example of that. I just went to America's Stonehenge. I gave a live lecture. It had nothing to do with American Stonehenge. It had to do with this disclosure, ancient megalithic, everything we've been talking about this last episode and stuff. And I went to America's Stonehenge in New Hampshire, and Michael Joser, who I do an episode every month on, a couple times a week. We do Dark Hour Paranormal, which is associated with, a bunch of other, Michael does a lot of brilliant work, but he came with, and here we are with Dennis Stone, the owner of America's Stonehenge, and we are at a secondary alignment. And Michael looks at a rock that has quartz, and we have video of this on Dark Hour Paranormal. And he goes, "Jared, is this quartz, or is this a writing?" Or I bend down and look, and I'm like, "Well, that's quartz, but there was also pecking on it, so it's been modified." And Dennis Stone, in all the years as a child, and it's been there's been active archaeological work there for 70 years. Yeah. So for those of you out there listening, this is it was literally hidden in plain sight. Shout out for Scott Walter. Hidden in plain sight. It looks like there's a quartz Phoenician A right next to a secondary alignment that everyone who's ever walked at the site should have went, I wonder why there's specifically a piece of quartz that's about 12 inches in diameter that specifically looks like a Mother Nature grown Phoenician symbol. But why is it right next to this particular alignment? And no one had ever noticed it. Everyone was walking by it. And I don't mean from 20 feet away. I mean, you could walk up and touch it. And wow. No one had noticed it. Only Michael noticed it first. He drew me in. I have video of the moment, and Dennis Stone's mind being blown that all these years, he and all these other astroarchaeologists and other physicists and geologists, Scott Walter, I mean, there's me, a bunch of people, everyone's been at this site. No one's noticed this one little thing. And again, you can see the video on Dark Hour. He put together a very nice documentary. This just got released a week ago. But as an example to everyone listening, don't hesitate to go to Egypt. Go to Machu Picchu. I mean, you don't even have to go to the biggest sites. Go to America's Stonehenge. Go somewhere. Go to the Montana Dolmens. I mean, go to the Singing Rock. I mean, go anywhere you've ever heard of anything really weird that you've had an interest in, and see how the site affects you, or see what you see, because your eyes on it may be the most unique eyes on it in 10,000 years.
Yeah, yeah. Precisely. I couldn't have said that better. It really is that being a part of it, doing the research for yourself. Even whenever I used to teach, that was always my last class, whether it was adults, whether it was kids. It was go out there and find out for yourself. For all I know, I may have lied to you all year. Literally, the only way you're going to find out is to go out there and literally look it up and go, was Chris lying? Let me.
But you get to say dudes and beer, dudes. That. Sorry, brah.
Sorry, bro. It's not my bag, baby.
Just cheers. You know?
Yeah.
Let me buy you a beer.
But it is that concept of being willing to go out there, being willing to, like you said, experiment with the ideas, play around with the concepts, not being rigid in your thought, but being limber in your process instead.
And yeah, stand there, go be present, and just go. You know, you might be following a friend who's like super into the witch's coven, fill in the blank. I'm into the solstices, and I'm into the moon equinoxes, and it's like that could mean nothing to you, and you could show up and notice something like what Michael noticed about this very specific quartz stone placement, but at the same time you could be there and notice something about some pecking and accidentally see a geoglyph that everybody had been walking over and mistook for like natural erosion, and it turns out to be a pictograph.
Wow. Amazing.
You know, that stuff happens.
That reminds me that we need to get the owner of America's Stonehenge back on the show and talk to him about that.
Oh yeah.
Dennis is an amazing guy. He is really, really, really cool. So
it was really fun being out there with him, and you know, we're looking at doing some work out there. Jennifer Deo and I, the archaeologist that I am co-writing with, and we co-host on Not Aliens. But on that, actually, now that you know, there was a news story that just came out. Before I forget and go further, that an amateur archaeologist found cave writings or drawings of deer in Scotland that just made headline news in Ancient Origins.
Oh, like really?
Today. Yeah, they could be like 6,000 years old, and nobody had found them, and somebody found them. I mean, there's stuff like that, and then there's there's other things that, you know, again, could just be alignment or geoglyphs, or you know, there's just so many different ways that the participation in our past is also finding our future. And it's exciting to know that, you know, even without, like you said, you know, when we were 20 minutes in, there's so many topics we've just touched on that for those with questions, we could, we might have to field some questions and answers, but
absolutely.
There's some internet searchable items that we've discussed tonight, and you might have homework.
Well, and that is the one thing that I've kind of loved over COVID is the evolution of the show into the video world, where as we talk about these things, I literally Google them and show pictures and all kinds of stuff. So, speaking of which, before we let you go, Jared, it is time for shameless self-promotion. As we bring it up on screen, tell everybody where they can go to subscribe to your YouTube, where they can go to follow the blog, follow the podcast, everything else.
Yeah, so definitely go to notaliens.com, because on my main page, of course, I have a members area, and you should join that. It's about a $3 espresso a month. You should do that. Yeah. But if you don't, you can also subscribe at Not Aliens on YouTube, which, as you know, a lot of people get in the naughty box or suspended. So really, although I put always a segment out there, the goal of YouTube is to get you to go to Rockfin. And I have a Rockfin channel now where I will start posting free content, but right now it's all members only. Okay. And Rockfin's pretty cool. It's like there's a number of people on there, and I am on Rockfin, and of course I co-host a number of different shows, including Dark Hour. I'm on Dark Hour and Everything Imaginable, Cosmic Salon, and my exclusive interviews on Not Aliens are generally behind my paywall, but that model, as I get some affiliates, will be eventually getting more expansive and interesting and shining for everyone. And with my revision of my book coming right now, if you want to read It's Not Aliens, Worse, It's Us, Discovering a Lost History, just look for right now there's 2 hours of audio out on the Not Aliens member area, plus hundreds of not only all the photos from my book, but the ones that didn't make it in the book. I include all those photos. I have other research, and I would love for everybody to, get to that area for me. And of course, go to Not Aliens on YouTube too. But come find me on notaliens.com. And of course, if you can, go for Rockfin and just say you did it because of Not Aliens.
Absolutely. Well, Jared, once again, thank you for a great conversation. Always great to rabbit hole with you, talk about things like this. We will be talking next week, folks, with Mike Turber of 5x5 News. All kinds of updates coming from him regarding the upcoming huge Pentagon report coming to the U.S. government. So we will see what comes of it. And Jared, please do hold the line while we close things out. While you're online checking out everything from Jared Murphy and notaliens.com, make sure to stop on by the Dudes and Beer podcast website. That is where you can find all the content. Soon we will also have our sister website, which will pretty much be a copy-paste of this website, but will be under the brand Curious Realm. Starting to build the SEO, things like that, getting things up. So we'll soon be directing all of our Knowledge Vault traffic to there. But keep your eyes out for that. CuriousRealm.com is the website that we will be having. Dudesandbeer.com is the website. Stop on by, download the free app. All kinds of good stuff. Until next time, everybody, take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And remember, if you can't be good at it. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Dudes and Beer podcast. To listen to our audio streams or chat with us live, download the official Dudes and Beer app for Android and iDevices, available on Google Play and iTunes markets. For more episodes, content, and information, visit us online at dudesandbeer.com. You can also find our episodes on Breach.tv, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast service. Dudes and Beer is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more about our sponsors and other podcasts on this network, visit hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, everybody, and until next time, drink responsibly.